The Mini 5 Pro introduces some new powerful filming features compared to previous lightweight models. The most important being the larger 1-inch sensor, the rotating gimbal, and the tele mode. In this video, I will walk you through all the settings you need to change to capture cinematic footage and make the most of its outstanding capabilities. In DJI Fly app, there are three main areas to access the video options. The settings via the three-dot icon at the top left of the screen, the photo-video window above the shutter, and the exposure value at the bottom right of the screen. I will focus only on the important one for filming. There are two main options to select in the Safety tab of Setting. The first one is the obstacle avoidance action. The Mini 5 Pro has omnidirectional sensing, and we want to keep it on at all times for peace of mind. On most occasions I select bypass to avoid obstacles on the way. Scrolling down, we select Advanced Safety Settings to choose the action to be taken in case of signal loss. Descent should never be selected as the drone may land on bushes or water. The safest choice is hover. In Gain and Expo settings, we can control the movement of the aircraft and the camera. We can set the values independently for each of the three speed modes: Cine, Normal and Sport. Max horizontal, ascend and descent speed are self-explanatory. Max angular velocity is the speed of the camera's rotation when panning using the left stick of the remote control. I suggest setting it to a low value. Yaw smoothness controls the behavior when releasing the stick after panning. I prefer a value just above the midpoint for a smoother release. Brake sensitivity controls the distance travel after releasing the right stick. Further down we can control the gimbal movement. Max control speeds determines how fast the gimbal will tilt up or down. I like to set a low value for precise moves. Tilt smoothness controls how quickly the gimbals come to a halt after a move. I prefer a value slightly above the midpoint. In Expo there are three sliders to adjust the sensitivity of the control sticks. I like to set them at very low values for a smoother response. The last two sliders of Gain and Expo settings control the behavior of a new feature, the gimbal roll. Max roll speed affects the rotation speed when using the gimbal dial. Roll smoothness should be set at a high value for a smoother rotation. Further down in the control menu, we access the button customization window to assign specific actions to the two buttons at the back of the controller, to the scroll wheel, or to a combination of wheel and button. I like to set the C1 button to recenter tilt down gimbal, and the C2 to cruise control. In cruise control we can start a movement, in this case advancing diagonally. When we tap the button, the aircraft will continue to fly in the same direction at the same speed, and we can concentrate on adding other movements like ascending and descending, and tilting or rotating the gimbal. The scroll wheel can be used to tilt the gimbal up and down, while the combination of the button and wheel can control the gimbal rotation. In the Camera tab of Settings, the menu is context sensitive. Since we have selected video in the Video Photo menu, all the items in the Camera tab will relate to filming. The histogram is the only tool I use for exposure, therefore I have it on all the time. I always leave some space between the last bar to the right and the right edge of the histogram to prevent burning the highlights. If the bars are bunched up against the left edge and there is plenty of space to the right, the image is underexposed, and we should increase the luminosity. However, there is more tolerance for underexposed shadows, as they can be recovered while editing, while overexposing highlights should be avoided at all costs. If bar touch both the left and right edge, we are in a high dynamic range situation. Further down, we can overlay grid lines. I find it useful to add the one in the middle to apply the rule of thirds. When filming with drones, we often have the horizon line in the frame. Rather than having it in the middle, it is more interesting to divide the scene into thirds and have it either on the upper or the lower third. On other occasions, especially for top-down shots, we might want a symmetric framing, in which case the same overlay helps position the subject. The option style presents two sliders to adjust sharpness and noise. I set them to -1 or -2, as I find the standard setting to over-sharpen the image and apply it to match noise reduction. To reduce noise, I use the excellent denoiser Neat Video when needed. You will find info about it in the description below. You can watch my video about Neat Video by clicking on the link above. The window for exposure is at the bottom right of the screen. The icon to the right toggles between auto and manual, labeled Pro. The aperture is fixed, so we have only two values to set when exposing: ISO and shutter speed. In auto mode, the only control on exposure is through the overall exposure value, EV, the first icon to the right. I find that this model tends to overexpose, so I prefer to lower the EV value by about 0.3 or 0.7. With all other drones or camera, I avoid filming with auto exposure, as the software compensates for the difference in luminosity with a small lag, a clear indicator of amateur footage. But with the Mini 5 Pro, it can be worth using it in a specific situation, as we will see later. In manual exposure mode, we can set the ISO value and shutter speed independently for more control. The value at the bottom cannot be modified. It displays the luminosity resulting from the values chosen above compared to the optimal exposure computed by the software. With the next icon, we can set resolution and frame rate. There are two resolution options, 4K and 1080p. 4K is nowadays the standard and the one I suggest using, although 1080p can still be used for social media if file size is an issue. Below the resolution there are options for different frame rates. The most widely used are 24 and 30. It is recommended to use a consistent frame rate across all clips in the same project. Higher frame rates like 48 and 60 frames per second can be used to apply some slow motion while editing. In videography, the 180-degree rule is widely applied. The idea is to set the shutter speed at a value double the frame rate to achieve the correct amount of motion blur. With a frame rate of 24 frames per second, the ideal shutter speed is 1/50th of a second. At 30 frames per second, 1/60th of a second, and so on. This rule is particularly important when flying close to the ground or when the scene contains moving elements. However, when flying at a high altitude, there is more tolerance, although very high shutter speed values should always be avoided. To control the shutter speed in all light conditions, a set of ND filter is needed. I use the Freewell All Day 6-pack with values from ND16 to ND1000, suitable for all light conditions, not only for video, but also for hyperlapses and long exposure photography. You will find a link with prices and info in the description of this video. It is an affiliate link, so in case of purchase, I receive a small commission, which helps the channel. As I said earlier, there is a situation when auto exposure can be a good choice. The specs of the Mini 5 Pro claim a whopping 14 stops of dynamic range. using the dual ISO fusion. This technique can only be applied when filming in auto exposure. Another possibility is to use manual exposure, setting the ISO value to auto. I do find that in high dynamic range situations it is worth using this technique for improved results. In the same window, we can click on the icon on the bottom left to access other video settings. At the top, we select the white balance value, expressed in kelvins. Auto white balance should be avoided as it leads to unwanted color shift when the luminosity changes. A quick way to find the correct value is to tap the auto button on the left to get the app's suggested value. Then tap it again to switch back to manual mode and adjust it to your test if needed. Below the resolution frame rate areas, we can select one of the three color profiles: normal, HRG, or D-Log-M. Normal mode is the most widely used. It is a pre-processed profile and can be used just out of the camera, although a touch of extra contrast and saturation is often beneficial. Normal has constantly improved over the years. It is now a true 10-bit mode, capable of displaying over 1 million colors with excellent quality in most light conditions. It is an excellent choice for users who don't rely on computer processing or when editing is not an option. D-Log-M is a flat profile, widely used by professionals for two reasons. It performs better in high dynamic range situations, and it responds extremely well to post-processing to adapt a clip to the color scheme of a specific project. We access video mode via the icon above the shutter. A menu on the left offers a slow motion option. It is meant for extreme slow motion at a frame rate of 120 fps, very interesting for scene with moving elements. With this mode, there is no need to slow down the footage while editing, as the slow motion is automatically applied. To the left of the shutter, an icon toggles between horizontal and vertical camera orientation to take footage in portrait mode. To the left of the shutter, we find another important new feature of the Mini 5 Pro, the tele mode. By tapping on the icon 2, we get a 2x zoom with image quality close to a true 48 optical lens. It works by cropping the central part of the image, taking advantage of the higher resolution of the 1-inch sensor. I find this feature extremely useful for filming subjects that we cannot reach, or increasing the parallax effect in scene with elements on different layers. By sliding on the icon, we get variable zoom levels up to 3 times, but in this case there is a noticeable loss of resolution. Click on this link to watch my video about photography with the Mini 5 Pro. And don't forget to hit the like button if you found this video interesting. Thank you.